All right, as I was editing this video last week, I saw that it was going way too long. And so, as I said in the last video, we have split the video into two videos. The one you watched last week, and if you haven't watched that, make sure to go back and watch it. And this week, which is part 2 of our detailed look at Slytherin. Now, since we've got the hood open, let's talk about the engine. And I told you that a lot of you were going to be disappointed. And I have no doubts. I am not a traditional Cobra guy. I like technology. And although I wanted a period look to the car, you can see that with the body modifications that I've done to the car, it's anything but traditional. And so when it came to the engine, I wanted something that was, one, reliable. And so I wanted a factory style EFI system to be on the car. Now, when I built this motor, I got into the might as wells. And I don't know if any of you have gone through this on a project, but you get to a point and you say, well, I've got it all this way apart. I might as well do this. And I might as well do that. And I got caught up in that. So when it came time to select a cam, Anthony has this exact same short block. Anthony is running the same engine, but he's running it carbureted. Carburetors can stand a higher lift cam a lot better than an EFI system can, especially a stock Ford EFI system. And so what I found is after I got the car running, somewhat running, I mean, I could drive it. It was running so poorly that I had to invest in a better fuel management system. So what I ended up doing is I still have all of the stock Ford wiring, but I went with a EFI system from a company called Stinger. And basically what it is it's a mega squirt or a micro squirt system that is mounted in a stock Ford computer case. And so there's very little wiring you have to do. I think because it's batch fired, what I ended up having to do is I think I had to move or switch 2 injector wires at the actual computer. And that was it. It takes care of turning the fan on and off. It does everything that I need it to do, and it has a self-tuning capability. Now, I don't rely on the self-tuning only because with the cam that's in it, it tends to try to overfuel to compensate for the cam at lower RPM. And then it just runs like crap. So that's the fuel system that I'm running on it. I'm running 42-pound injectors. So that's it on the motor. Now, backing that, I have a T5Z transmission. So basically what I have is I have a T5 out of the donor Mustang. Now I used a donor originally to build the car. And so we took that transmission completely apart. We rebuilt it to the Z-Spec T5. And then we put a couple of hardened parts in. I think they're called, they're cryo hardened, from a company called Astro. And we did that in some of the key gears, and we put the brass synchros in because Anthony has the same kind of setup. And so those are the areas that we concentrated on as we were putting the transmission back together during the rebuild. Now, we've talked about the engine, we've talked about the transmission. I do have power brakes on this car. So I'm using 2-piston PBRs in the front, and I do have the red powder-coated calipers, and I'll give you a glance at those in just a minute. But I also have the 3-channel ABS pump and system out of the donor. So I'm running a Ford Mustang pedal assembly in the car. which I think is perfect, because anybody with big feet will tell you that the Willwood pedal box the Factory 5 offers sucks for anybody that has big feet. There's just no room in between the pedals for your feet. So I've got the stock Mustang pedal assembly, and then I was able to bend the pedals in a more pleasing arrangement for my feet. And so I can actually drive this car in my tennis shoes, my size 13 EEE tennis shoes, and not have to worry about hitting the accelerator at the same time I'm braking, or, you know, glancing off the brake pedal as I'm engaging the clutch. So I like my setup. I do have, like I said, power brakes. So I do have a power brake booster in the car. And I'll see if I go over to the other side so you can get a look at the power brake booster. So there's the power brake booster right there. And then I have a 1995 Cobra master cylinder. So the Cobra master cylinder has equal bores for each of the cylinders inside the master. And so it's 3/4 for the front and 3/4 for the rear, which makes for really good braking on one of these cars. Then I told you I was going to show you the 2-piston PBRs on the front. That's what they look like. So these are actually the 2-piston PBRs out of a 2004 Mustang, because they fit in the 17-inch Halibran wheels, where the earlier 2-piston PBRs, like from the 94, 95 Cobra R and Cobras, are a little bit bigger, and they would not clear the 17-inch Halibrans that I have. And these are actual Halibran wheels. So these are Halibran Cobra 3 wheels. And I really like the wheels. As I showed you before, I've got them all cleaned up now, and they really look nice. All right, and then to finish up the front of the car here, I do have the ceramic coated Factory 5 pipes. So these are just the generic Factory 5 steel pipes that I had ceramic coated in the bright silver metallic. And then I'm running a set of the aftermarket, what Factory 5 would call their premium louvers. But I did have those powder coated black. Now, I thought about having Jeff paint them with the car, but I wanted to have a few black accents throughout the car. I didn't want to completely black out the car. I think that it's overdone now. It's done so many times on a lot of these cars that I wanted something just a little bit different. And so I'll go back to something I've said before in some of the videos. I believe that every car needs a little bit of chrome. Whether it's just chrome wheels or whether it's the chrome around the windshield, every car needs a little bit of chrome or a little bit of polished aluminum. I just think it helps to make the car pop. And that may not be your style. But in this, I wanted some of the black accents, and I wanted some of the bright chrome or polished aluminum accents. And I think I pulled it off pretty well. This again is my car, and this is the way I wanted it to be. One last look at the engine, and then we're going to move on to some of the other stuff. All right, we're going to go over some of the stuff on the inside of the car. And the first thing that you're going to see is that I've got a more traditional day and night mirror mounted in the car. Now it mounts to the hardtop. There's a bracket right up here. And then there's a drop down on that the rear view mirror attaches to. And so it makes it real nice when you get some guy crawl up your ass on the freeway with his high beams on. You can switch it over to the night mode and it's not quite so bright in your eyes. So we've got that. And then while we're here, this is one of those things that Jeff Miller just hates me for. All those perforations, all those holes in the top of the body right there is for a speaker. So there's a 4-inch speaker under the dash that we put on both sides of the car, so the passenger side and over on the driver's side. And I do have a Kenwood head unit in here. We don't use it for radio much, but I do have an antenna, and I'll show you where that is. But most of the time we just use the USB drive in it. We load that full of music, and then as long as we're driving on country roads and we don't have the side pipes singing to us, we can usually hear the radio or we can hear the stereo playing. And then in the back here, I have a set of DS18. These are 5x7, and they are a coaxial speaker. They actually sound really nice. The problem is when you're on the highway, the wind noise just drowns out any stereo that you're going to have in one of these cars. Now, the hardtop does help a little bit because it cuts down on the wind buffeting quite a bit. But if I were to do this all over again, I probably would not put a sound system in the car. I spent far too much money for very, very minimal enjoyment out of the stereo system in the car. I do like the fact that we integrated the speakers into the body. I mean, I've seen no one else do that before. And I want to give a quick shout out. I don't do shout outs all that often. To my buddy Dan Zile, because he made me a steel template to drill all those holes. So basically he chucked up about a 1/4 inch, maybe it was 3/16 steel piece, flat stock in his mill. And with the DRO, the digital readout, he was able to make that speaker pattern with all those holes in a piece of steel so that I could basically clamp it to the car and then drill the holes so that the speaker that mounts underneath would basically be centered in the center of all those holes. And when the car is just sitting here in the shop, the stereo sounds awesome. But as soon as you get it on the road and you start getting wind noise and you get the noise of the side pipes, I mean, it's kind of a futile battle. But like I said, I don't think I'd do it again, but I've got it. And so we do use it, especially when we're on cruises like with the group. And if we get stuck somewhere in traffic, it sure is nice to have some tunes in the background and kind of puts you in a better state of mind rather than just being mad at traffic. So when we get around to the trunk, I'll show you the amplifier that I'm running in there. It's a 4-channel amp. I think if I remember right, it's about 1,000 watts. And like I said, it's way overkill, but I got it, so I use it. All right, here again, I just want to show the little touches of black and the little touches of polished aluminum. So around the roll bar bezels, we did those in a gloss powder coated black. But you can see around the seatbelt bezels, we went ahead and we did those in just the polished aluminum. And I just like the contrast of that. Now, we could have done the seatbelt bezels in black too, but like I said, it starts to get too much. And so I wanted a little bit of contrast here and there, and I figured this was a good compromise, doing some of the parts in black, some of the parts in polished. All right, this is one of those things that was much more pronounced when the hardtop wasn't on. However, it still throws off quite a bit of light. I've never been behind the car with Mrs. IE 427 driving the Cobra that I can tell you whether you can see this or not, but there's a third brake light that we integrated into a full width roll bar in the car. Now the story goes like this. I ordered this Mark III when Factory 5 was still selling a full width roll bar. And sometime during the time my order went in and the time the car was delivered, they were no longer producing the full width roll bar. So I had to settle for just a single driver's side roll bar when the car was delivered. That roll bar never went on. I sold it before I ever got the car on the road, and I made my own full width roll bar. I even went to the trouble of making my own bender, hydraulic bender, to bend the 2-inch tubing, because I figured if Factory 5 wasn't going to make them anymore, then I would offer people an alternative and make roll bars. And it didn't quite work out that way, but I still have the bender, and I've used it quite a bit. I've made a couple of full width roll bars. The one that is on Anthony's Mark III, we made, and we also made it with a full width harness bar that his 5-point harnesses clip into. Okay, so in the back, I've already told you we've got the Halabrand, the Cobra 3. Now in the rear, I do have the 17 by 11. They're called deep lip. So that's the amount of back spacing right here that gives you this this look that these wheels have a deeper lip than they actually do. And that's because the spokes kind of bend back. I have another set of wheels for this car that I had in the very beginning. And those were American Racing Redline wheels. And they were a limited edition Shelby Classic wheel. And they did the same thing. Now, that was before I did the fender flares on this car. And so I'm running a 94, 95, basically SN95 rear axle, which is wider to start with than a Fox body axle. The axle housing is the same. It's just the axles themselves that go into the housing that are wider. And so when I ran the Cobra, the Shelby Classics before, I was able to tuck those in with the 94 axle in the rear and not have any rubbing. Now those wheels were only 10.5 inches wide. 10 inches wide. I think they're 10. And so I was limited. I could only run a 285 or a 295 on the rear. Now those are 18-inch wheels. These are 17s. So with the 17 by 11, I run a 315, and because of that, it makes the tires actually look wider than they are. Now, if you put the same tire on a 10.5-inch wheel, it makes the tire look smaller, but it's all an illusion. The actual contact patch of the tire is the same. The tires kind of stretch out on an 11-inch wide wheel and make it look wider than it is. So here's the wheels, and now you'll notice that these say Hallebrand on them. So right here it says Hallebrand. It's a Cobra 3, and I actually have the Hallebrand tri-spinners on here. Now, I bought these wheels with both the tri-spinners and the caps, and I just recently sold the caps. I had never run the caps. They were brand new. I had them in the box, and so a guy was looking for center caps for Hallebrand wheels, the Cobra 3s, and so I thought, well, I'm never going to use these. I'm just going to sell them. And I actually like the look of the Hallebrand spinners. Now, my buddy Greg has the same wheels, but he has a set of tri-spinners from like Team 3 or oh, I forgot the name of the company. But they sell a tri-spinner for the Cobra 3 wheel, and it has a, what do they call it? It's an angled tri-bar spinner. And so instead of being flat like these are, and they're not completely flat, they do flare out a little bit. My buddy Greg's actually come out, towards the outside of the wheel, but they don't say Hallebrand on them. And so I just like these better because, again, they say Hallebrand, and they don't make these wheels anymore. So this was like right at the end when Hallebrand was producing wheels, and not soon after I got these, they went out of business. So I'm really happy with these. And then as far as the brakes go, I'm running an 11.5-inch rotor, I think it is, with a single piston rear caliper, and that's the Ford caliper. And I bought these from a company called, oh God, what is it? Pro Stop. And they basically sell rebuilt calipers, and you can have them powder coat them. While I'm back here, I figured I would show you the overriders and how closely I have those tucked into the body. I mean, you can't even get your finger in between here. And I just think it makes the car at the back look cleaner. I just don't like those long stems sticking out from the back of the car. And then if you look, we have the same taillights that we're doing on the prototype from Texas. This is the first car that we did these to. And these are 41 through 46 Chevy sedan taillights that are LED. The difference is these actually came with light buckets. So I had to cut that whole area of the body out for these because they were set up for an incandescent bulb. And then they have these LED panels, and so that whole thing fits in there. And so I had to weld, I had to put studs in, I had to cut the body out to make it all fit. The new ones are just a panel, and they just mount with basically the two studs here, and that's it. And so the new ones are much better. You can see mine have Phillips head screws that hold the trim on. The new ones don't. They're clean. There's no Phillips head screw on the new ones. There you go. Those are the taillights. And then Slytherin. So how did Slytherin get its name? Well, just like everything else, there's a good story. The story of where the company, i.e. 427, got its name is a good story too. The story for our construction business is much the same. Circumstances. Sometimes names just present themselves. You know, you could be watching a James Bond movie, but the combination of a James Bond movie and a bottle of scotch might get you a company name. Or you might just live in a certain particular area of Southern California that people refer to as the IE, and your company gets a name. With Slytherin, it was kind of an evolution. We were looking for not catchy names, but a name, basically a personalized plate, a vanity plate they call it here in California, to put on the car. And as you go through it, you know, you're looking for all these different things: cobra, serpent, snake, and all the ones you think of first are already taken. And so, you know, what do you do at that point? Well, we were doing an annual show at the LA Arboretum, and the show that one of my buddies, Dan, was putting on was called Serpents in the Garden. And so with that name, Serpent, we started looking for variations of snakes, or what snakes do, or what makes snakes snakes. And at the same time, all of the Harry Potter movies were coming out. The first Harry Potter movie, and then there was another one, and I don't even know the names of them. So regardless of what you think of the Harry Potter movies, it gave us a whole new pool of names in which to pull from. And so one of the houses that they have in the Harry Potter movies, like they have all these different houses that the kids are in, kind of like sorority houses. One of the house names was Slytherin. And so I immediately went online and I started looking up to whether Slytherin was available. And my first spelling of the word was taken. And my second spelling of the word was taken. After about the fourth or fifth spelling of the word, I got available. I didn't waste any time. I grabbed my credit card, I punched it in, and I reserved that license plate. And lo and behold, 3 months later, we got our license plate in the mail. And so that's how Slytherin got the name Slytherin. Because we were just running out of personalized plate names for a snake. And so, you know, what does a snake do? It slithers. And this house in Harry Potter that these kids, dorm room or whatever you want to call it, was named Slytherin. And so we were able to find a cool name for this car, and it's stuck ever since. Now, if we're ever to move out of state, whether that name is going to be available in another state in a vanity plate, I don't know. But the name is going to stick with the car because we've referred to this car as Slytherin for so many years now. It's not going to change. So let me get the trunk opened up. I'm going to get working on vacuuming the car out. I've just got a few things left, and the car will be ready to take outside tomorrow and do some vanity shots of the car. And that'll be in the next video. But you guys will see it all cleaned up and ready for that video in this one. One cool thing about having a donor harness in your car is that you can decide what you want to keep and what you want to diet out. I don't know if you heard that. That was my trunk. So there's no handle on the trunk. There's an electric latch out of the donor car mounted right there. And I made my own custom latch that locks in there. Now I do have a hidden latch to open it in case the battery fails. Because if you remember, my battery's right here. This was the first car that we did our side mount battery that's behind this panel in the dead space behind the wheel on the driver's side. And so if that battery were ever to fail, or if I were to leave something on and not be able to get it in the trunk, that would suck. So I have a latch that I can engage to open the trunk if that ever happened. And honestly, I use that more than I actually use the electric button, but it's kind of cool having it. Then right here, you'll notice this is our drop trunk, and this was the original Cannonball Cobra drop box. This was his prototype. We did this in my car when Paul was still around, and it is actually made of galvanized sheet metal versus aluminum. And this is one piece. So it was bent on a finger brake, and then the corners were welded. And that's the way that Cannonball Paul was making them. And once he passed away, I asked the family if it would be okay if I continued to sell some of his drop trunk boxes, and they said that they didn't have a problem with it. I'm now making them in a 3-piece kit that I can bend up on my standard brake. And so this is one of the first. Now, you'll notice I do have access panels, but they're not the cool oval-shaped ones that Factory 5 has. These are square because Factory 5 didn't have a cover plate for the Mark IIIs. You had to make your own. And squares were a lot easier to make than, oval or round ones. So that's what I have here on Slytherin. So that's for my fuel pump, and that's for the fuel pump, the fuel sender. And then in here, you should just be able to make out the antenna for the FM radio. So it's actually mounted under the car. It comes up through the trunk, and it just comes up just below the body over here. Now, it doesn't pick up every radio station, but if you're in an area where the radio signal's fairly strong or even medium, you'll be able to get FM radio. And I think what I have is a Planet Audio 1000 watt power amp, and it's a 4-channel amp, and that takes care of all of the 4 speakers within the car. What you're going to see is that I've also got lights underneath there. They go on and off with a tilt switch from the donor car. So this is just pop riveted to the bottom of the trunk deck lid, and there is a ball bearing in there, and it makes contact when the trunk is opened, and then it loses contact when the trunk is closed. This is a Mark IV trunk deck lid, and you'll notice the bottom of it is painted black, just like I told you. Just like the hood. And then this was the first cover that I ever made for the inside of the trunk deck lid. And I had a question recently about how do I attach them, and you can see I just attach them with pop rivets. They're kind of hard to see. I don't have a light in here right now. But I just attach them with pop rivets because the frequency in which you'll have to get in there to service anything is going to be pretty rare. So I don't see a need for nut certs and machine screws. And then I've got a set of Mike Everson's trunk struts. These are the Mark III style, even though this is a Mark IV trunk deck lid. And don't let anybody at Factory 5 tell you that a Mark IV trunk deck lid will not fit on a Mark I through III. They fit. The big issue is that you are going to have to figure out your hinges, because you can't use the Mark III hinges. So I made my own hinges, and you can see they're these kind of L-shaped hinge, and then I had them powder-coated black. And they work perfectly. One of the things that I think is just awesome with this trunk and the latch system that I have is you can just take and close it, and it's closed. No fumbling with a T-handle. Just close it. It's done. Now, if I could have found a more elegant solution for the T-handle on the back of the hard top hatch, I would have. But there's just no room inside here to get any kind of mechanism that would throw the rods into the top and hold it shut. And so I was just trying to look for the the most minimalist solution to the hatch for holding it shut and locking it that I could find, and that was it. So short of vacuuming out the interior and doing a quick once over, Slytherin's ready to go outside and ready for a close-up. So I'm going to end this one here. As always, if you are enjoying the content here, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.